A capacity for existential flexibility. We'll stick with the Apple theme. Why not? In 1979, Steve Jobs and a bunch of his senior executives visited Xerox PARC. In 1979, Apple was already a big company. They had already had the success on the Apple I and the Apple II. Steve Jobs was already a famous CEO. And as executives do, they visit each other's companies, and on this particular day, they went and visited Xerox's R&D division, Xerox PARC in Palo Alto. And while they were there, Xerox showed them something they had invented called the graphic user interface. And the graphic user interface allowed computer users to move a mouse so that you could move a cursor over the desktop and click on icons and folders in order to work the computer. In other words, you didn't have to learn a computer language anymore. As they're leaving Xerox, Jobs says to his executives, we have to invest in this graphic user interface thing. Remember, if the cause is to empower individuals to stand up to Big Brother, this graphic user interface thing empowers way more people to be able to use the technology. The voice of reason spoke up and said, Steve, we can't. We can't do that. We've already invested millions of dollars and countless man-hours in a different strategic direction. If we change and invest in the graphic user interface, we're going to blow up our own company. We can't just abandon our investment. To which Jobs actually said, if we don't blow up our company, somebody else will. That decision led to the Macintosh, a computer platform so profound that the entire software of Windows is basically designed to act like a Macintosh. A decision so profound that it changed the way computing works today, that now a computer has become an appliance inside our company, inside our homes and our companies for that matter. So common, and we now live in a world in which an individual can indeed compete against a corporation. Existential flexibility is the capacity to make profound strategic shifts, 180-degree strategic shifts, in order to better advance your cause. And failure to do so may ultimately lead to the demise of your own organization. Back when Blockbuster, you remember Blockbuster was the 800-pound gorilla, especially in the United States. Basically, you couldn't rent videos from anywhere else except from Blockbuster versus mom and pops that were in your local neighborhood. And there was this little upstart company called Netflix that had a new business model based on subscriptions, that you would subscribe, you remember, and they would send you the DVDs and you can keep them for as long as you want, versus how we used to rent videos in the past. And the CEO of Blockbuster went to his board and said, we have to look into the subscription model thing, especially where streaming technology is getting better and better. We should probably prepare ourselves. And the board said, absolutely not, we may not do that, because we get 12% of our revenues from late fees, and we'd be walking away from that revenue. Blockbuster no longer exists, and Netflix dominates the industry. Because if you're not willing to blow up your own company, the market will blow it up for you. Even if it means making a short-term hit to the short-term results. In order to have a capacity for existential flexibility, one, you have to have a just cause, and B, you have to have trusting teams. The cause is what directs that flexibility. This is not like shiny object syndrome, that so many of us have either suffered from or have been subjected to, where some entrepreneur hears a speech and hears the latest shiny object and wants to redirect the whole company there, and after the fourth or fifth one this year, everybody doesn't know what the hell's going on. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the daily flexibility required to run your business. I'm talking about when you discover a technology or a better strategy or a better way to advance your cause, and you're willing to make this profound strategic shift in order to advance your cause. But you have to know what your cause is first, and you better have trusting teams, because the likelihood that you're going to put your company through upheaval in the short term is high, and your people have to be willing to go along with it. In other words, they say, we agree, this is going to hurt, let's do it. Because if they don't, they'll all abandon ship. Kodak made the same mistake. George Eastman invented film. George Eastman is the very reason why you and I can take pictures of our own families and our own holidays. Prior to George Eastman, the only way you could take a picture was to hire a professional photographer. He was obsessed with democratizing photography. He was obsessed with making it simpler and simpler and simpler so more and more people could engage in photography. And in 1975, one of the engineers, Steve Sasson, at Kodak, who believed in George Eastman's just cause, invented the digital camera. Unfortunately, there have been so many leadership changes at Kodak over the years that the current executives had adopted a finite mindset. And when they saw the digital camera, they decided to suppress the technology for fear that it would cannibalize film sales. Because the company had built its monstrous self and based on chemicals and developing and cameras and all the rest of it. And they couldn't imagine the upheaval to become a digital camera. They knew once the genie was out of the bottle, there was no putting it back. They knew they had about 10 years. They predicted about 10 years before the digital technology would show up somewhere else. And amazingly, to the year, exactly 10 years later, digital technology started to show up from other companies. And the digital revolution started to take hold. In fact, Kodak made billions of dollars from the royalties they received from the patents they had for the digital cameras, for the digital technology. And when those patents ran out, 5 years later, they were bankrupt. Because they refused. They couldn't go through the existential flex. They had abandoned their just cause. They'd adopted a finite mindset. The teams were no longer trusting teams because the company was so driven by short-term gains and short-term goals that for so many years they thought they were doing well because of those royalties, until they no longer existed as a threat or as a significant market player. Do you have a capacity for existential flexibility? If you want to stay in the game, in the infinite game, you better.